Has cancel culture created a silent majority for President Trump? You better believe it. Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button. Today we're going to be talking a lot about polls in 2016, how they were way off, and basically President Trump ended up winning the election, even though the polls in both nationally and on a state-by-state basis showed that he would clearly lose. This led to Nate Silver's ridiculous call with something like 90% certainty Hillary Clinton would win, because his model assumed that the polls would be accurate, and they were not accurate. And I believe that the reason for this is because of cancel culture and the fact that people are afraid to say that they support President Trump, even though they really do. So therefore, he underperforms in the polls. And if you look at the RealClear politics average in the days before the election, they consistently underreported President Trump's margin of victory. In Florida, they said that he would get 47% of the vote, but he ended up getting 48.6%. In North Carolina, they said he would get 46.5% of the vote. He ended up getting 49.8% of the vote. In Ohio, they said he would get 46.2%. He ended up with 51.3%. In Pennsylvania, they said he would get 44.7%. He ended up getting 48.2% and winning that state. The polls were wrong there. In Michigan, the same deal. They said he would get 43.4%, but he ended up getting 47.3%. And in the general election, they said that he would get 43.6% of the vote, but he ended up getting 46.1% of the vote. So state by state and on a national basis, they were underreporting by 2 points in Florida, 3.3 points in North Carolina, 5.5 points in Ohio, 3.5 points in Pennsylvania, and 4.1 points in Michigan. Trump ended up winning with 49% of the vote in Florida, 49.8 in Carolina, 51.7 in Ohio, 48.2 in Pennsylvania, and 47.5 in Michigan. And nationally, polls underreported President Trump's support by 2.5 points. And so these were the polls taken right before the election, and which they tend to be more accurate than those in the spring and in summertime, which I believe tend to oversample Democrats and appear, I think, their intent to create panic amongst the GOP establishment and amongst voters. President Trump calls them suppression polls, and they show ridiculous lopsided margins against the Republican candidate. In the 2016 cycle, Clinton was leading Trump in all of the polls that were taken across the country, and we'll go through these. In June 21, Quinnipiac reported that in Florida, Clinton was up 47 to 39, but that was off by 10 points going on down the line. In North Carolina, NBC News, Wall Street Journal, and Marist, they reported President Trump was losing 44 to 38 in North Carolina in July. And then in August, the lead widened to 9 points, 48 to 39. But that was off by 11 points. PPP, Ohio, they had Hillary Clinton up by 4 points in a midsummer poll. That ended up being off by 12 points. In Pennsylvania, Hillary Clinton was said to be leading by 45 to 36, and that ended up being off by 12 points. Gravis in Michigan had Hillary Clinton winning 48 to 41 midsummer. That ended up being off by 6.5 points. The general election had Hillary Clinton up 51 to 39. That was off by 7 points. And so on down the line, I think you see that these polls have been ridiculously off. And how could this be? I think in 2016, there was a lot of social pressure among families, friends, and even professionally against Trump. If you were a Trump supporter, you could expect personal ostracization from peers and even employers. He might be called a bigot, a racist, a fascist, a Nazi, you name it. And so 2016 was notoriously hard to poll politically, given the fear of repercussions amongst Trump supporters. In 2020, I'd say that the climate of social fear is arguably worse. It's cancel culture run amok. Robert Cahaly, he's with the Trafalgar Group, and he basically was the only pollster that said that President Trump was going to win. He called Michigan in favor of Trump. He called Pennsylvania in favor of Trump. And he talks about a lot about social desirability bias and how it is impacting poll results that you see now. He says that it is actually, quote, worse than it was 4 years ago. And so the way I think suppression polls work is it's to make it socially unacceptable to support Trump. And it's not just the polls, though. You can see it play out in institutions, whether it's government or, if you're a government employee, or if you're in academia, if you're a teacher, things like that, where even in your workplace, where you, depending on what the political affiliation of your boss is, you might not be allowed to express your politics. And that's just the way it goes. And so what do we see in 2020? Is former Vice President Joe Biden. He has a comfortable lead in the general election. Biden's said to be up by 8.6 points. In Florida, he's up by 6.4 points, though some of the polls say he's up by 10 points. In Ohio, they say it's a tie or that he's up 1 or 2 points. In Michigan, he's up by 7.7 points. But what I find is a consistent theme here is that Biden's not really getting above 50 in many of these polls. In North Carolina, Biden's said to be up by 2 points. And so you see, no, he doesn't really get above 50. 47.3 to 45.3, 48 to 40 in Michigan, 44 to 44 in Ohio, 49 to 42 in Florida, and in the general election, 48 to 40. So I think that this social desirability bias is what's basically making it so that President Trump is underperforming in the polls just like he did last time. But in fact, I think it's actually showing that Trump's a little bit ahead of where he was in 2016 at this point in the race. And I'll leave you with the close here, leaving Biden in a deceptively weak position compared to Clinton. If we're seeing a similar cycle as last time, as the summer goes on and we hit the presidential nomination conventions, watch for Trump's picture to improve somewhat, take a nosedive in the fall, and then in late October, it'll be dead heat. We've seen this movie before. It's the one where the incumbent usually wins. A silent majority, you better believe it. That's the commentary. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day.